The show begins with Sang at school, and we see that she's not paying attention in class. The teacher notices she isn't following along and asks her a math question he was explaining to the class. Sang answers it correctly, but to challenge her further, he tells her to bring an adult with her. After school, she calls her older brother and asks him when he'll be back from college because she needs his help with something. Her brother insists she should handle it on her own, leaving her unsure of what to do when she arrives home. As Sang prepares to tell her mother that the school asked her to bring an adult, she realizes her brother has returned home. She rushes to his room but sees his friend instead. It's her first time meeting him. Her brother, Yan, walks out from behind her, and his friend Jiao joins them. As siblings do, Sang and her brother start arguing. Sang tries to ask Yan to accompany her to school, but he refuses before she even explains why. He leaves to change, so Sang decides to ask Jiao instead. At first he declines, but after she keeps pleading, he agrees to accompany her and pretends to be her brother while talking to her teacher. Years pass, and Sang has grown into a young woman with only a year of school left. We learn that she's been thinking about Jiao, whom she hasn't seen since he helped her that one day at school. She later discovers that her brother plans to move into college housing and that Jiao is helping him move. Wanting to help her beloved brother, she decides to lend a hand as well. After school, she goes to her brother's college, where she sees a car with items packed in it. As she approaches, she finds Jiao standing nearby, and they start unloading the items and setting up her brother's room. That evening, Sang calls her brother and mentions she left her book near him. She talks to Jiao, saying it's essential that she gets the book back immediately. He asks why, and she explains she needs it for school the next day. They agree to meet early the next morning to do some exercises together while going over the book. The scene flashes back to when Sang was younger, remembering the day Jiao pretended to be her brother at school. Arriving late, he met with her teacher, introducing himself as her brother. After they left, she told him not to tell anyone he wasn't actually her brother to avoid any trouble. He then dropped her off at home, and she hadn't seen him again until she visited her brother at college. Now, Sang and Jiao often run into each other, even meeting for coffee in the mornings. During one of these meetings, she begins writing her article, and later he offers to drop her off at school. That night, while she's drawing, her parents inform her that they'll be working early the next morning and will be home late. "Your brother is coming to take care of you. Feel free to go out and eat if you like," they say as they leave. That same day, her brother arrives at the house and begins searching for her. When he sees her, he asks, "What would you like to eat?" At first, she doesn't want to leave the house, but when she hears him talking to Jiao about going out together, she quickly goes to change her clothes. They all get into the car with Jiao and another friend, heading to the mall. Once there, Sang starts feeling unwell. Jiao notices something on her skirt and realizes what's wrong. He follows her to the restroom and tells her brother what happened. Then they head to a supermarket to buy supplies like pads and tissues to prevent anyone from noticing, saving her from embarrassment. Meanwhile, Sang is in the restroom feeling incredibly embarrassed, worrying that Jiao might have seen what happened. Then a girl comes and hands her the items her brother and Jiao bought. When she leaves the restroom, she only sees her brother waiting for her, and they go to buy food. Sang wants pasta with meat, but her brother reminds her, "Don't forget you're allergic to beef." Jiao picks up the pasta and removes the meat for her so she can eat without feeling self-conscious. After they finish eating, they head out to play games, and Jiao helps her win a balloon, telling her it's a gift, which makes Sang very happy. Days later, Sang and a friend visit a dessert shop where she notices Jiao. She greets him, and when she tries to pay for her order, he returns her money. As she's waiting, she sees the shop manager ask Jiao for the rent due this month, but the manager says he can't pay more than half. Sang realizes he's in a tough financial situation. After they finish, she tries to give him money, but he refuses again. As she leaves, Jiao notices she's left money on the table. Later, Sang is at the mall for a classmate's birthday celebration. The boy uses the event as a chance to confess his feelings for Sang, but before he can speak, she walks away. He follows her and tries to say, "I like you," but Sang tells him to think it over. At that moment, Jiao arrives. The boy mistakes him for her brother and quickly leaves. Jiao tells Sang, "If you want to reject someone, do it respectfully." He then gives her back the money, saying, "I can handle the dessert payment. It's no big deal." Unfortunately, Sang begins to notice that her friend, who once tried to be around her all the time, is now avoiding her and acting as if they're no longer close. Sang can't figure out what went wrong, so she carries on with her daily life. Then, the International School Games Day arrives, where each student is expected to sign up and compete in the games. Sang registers herself for the games and is assigned to participate in the high jump. She notices her brother and Jiao nearby, there to support her and assist if anything happens. Unfortunately, during the jump, she injures her leg. Her brother and Jiao help clean the wound, and her brother takes her to the hospital. The next day, her brother informs her school that he won't be able to pick her up and tells her that Jiao will come instead, though he might be late by 30 minutes. Sang says, "It's okay, I'll wait." Meanwhile, she sees her friend, who has been distant recently, asking her if she'd like to come to the supermarket. Sang happily agrees, excited to go along. However, Jiao arrives at the school entrance, and the guard tells him no one is there, causing him to worry and search everywhere for her. Sang, who is with her friend in an unexpected place, sees a group of people mistreating others. This group demands money from a girl, threatening to make her life difficult if she doesn't pay. The girl brings Sang to them, hoping to get money from her. The group takes all the money Sang has and tells her to return with more money the next day, then leaves. Furious, Sang yells at her friend, upset and distressed, then walks away. Jiao sees her, and she begins to cry when she sees him. He tries to comfort her, and after a moment, she explains everything that happened. Jiao doesn't want to let the matter go and assures her, "Don't worry," as he brings her home. She goes to her room, feeling much happier. The following day, after school, she sees her brother Jiao and two others waiting. They ask her to take them to where the group that harassed her usually stays. When she leads them there, 3 of them approach the group and intimidate them until they nearly start crying. They retrieve Sang's money and return it to her, assuring her, "Don't worry, everything is okay." After that, Sang goes back to her normal life and everything seems fine. When the yearly exam results are released, she finds that she did well in every subject except for physics, which she didn't enjoy and received a low grade. Her family decides to hire a private tutor for her, but she doesn't want someone unfamiliar coming into the house. Her family suggests that her brother could tutor her since he is very good at physics. However, they have a strained relationship and often argue, making it impossible for him to teach her. They decide to hire a different tutor, who happens to be Jiao. When Sang learns this, she's overjoyed and eagerly prepares her book for the lessons. During their sessions, Jiao quickly realizes that Sang dislikes physics because she finds it boring. He talks to her brother and says, "I'd like to take her to a science exhibition to explain physics in a more engaging way." Her brother liked the idea and agreed. A few days later, he takes her to the exhibition and begins to explain the game's concepts and rules. We see that she is very happy. After they finish, she tells her brother everything and says she is hungry. However, Jiao gets a work call saying a code he sent needs adjustments. Jiao mentions that he has his laptop with him and can fix the mistakes right away. Here, we learn that he works for a company that specializes in gaming programs. He has always dreamed of being a game developer. Unfortunately, when she returns home, she discovers that her beloved drawing book is missing. She starts searching everywhere but can't find it. Eventually, she remembers she left it at the science exhibition and tells herself, "Oh no, it's lost." The next day, she sees her brother, who gives her the book, saying, "Jiao brought it to you earlier." He then heads to work. Days later, we see him returning to the university dorms because he hates being at home. Jiao tells him that Sang hasn't given any lessons this week due to the trouble she caused, and she wants to meet someone she learned about online. Her family confiscates her phone because she's still a minor, and they lock her in her room. However, the following week, we find out that all of this was a lie and a story she made up. Jiao talks to her and learns that this person studies at the university and she has a crush on him. Jiao advises her, saying she's still too young, and tells her that what that boy is doing is wrong, and she shouldn't engage in such things. Sang tells him that she has no intention of talking to him again and has deleted his number. Jiao believes her, but he says that if he finds out she has decided to meet him before she goes to the university, he'll make sure she doesn't get to the university at all. Then, the lessons in physics continue, and we see that she is doing very well. As the final exam approaches, Jiao says everything is fine, the lessons are complete, and he tells her that if she gets good results, she should bring him a nice gift. Fortunately, the last day of classes coincides with the first day of the Lunar New Year. The whole family is celebrating, and they invite Jiao, but he respectfully declines and returns to the university dorms. We see him sitting somewhere, playing a game when he receives a message from his mother's nurse. She informs him that his mother's condition is worsening and she needs to be taken to the hospital as soon as possible. She asks him to come back so he can be involved in the process, and he replies that he's on his way. After Seng takes her final exam, she achieves excellent results and ranks among the top 10 in her class. Her brother gives her a gift from Jiao, and she learns that he has returned to the village. Seng becomes angry, but then finds out that he will attend the graduation party to say goodbye to his friends and the university before starting his own life. Seng is very happy that he is coming, and she calls him to tell him about the latest events and how much she loves the gift. Then we see someone knocking at the door. When he opens the door, he sees a girl he once knew. We see that she often chases after him, but it's clear he doesn't love her. She tries to give him money because she knows the hardships he's going through, but Jiao refuses and tells her to leave. The graduation ceremony begins, and everyone arrives. Seng gives Jiao flowers, but she is unable to give him the gift she brought. Amidst the celebration, all their friends realize this will likely be their last meeting. Although they graduated from the same college starting today, everyone will go their separate ways. Some will work at the companies where they interned, while others will return to their villages. They all understand that the coming days will be the hardest of their lives as their meetings will become less frequent. That night, they celebrate until late. During the party, Jiao receives a message from Jian, the girl who came to his house to offer him money. She congratulates him on graduating, but we see that he is indifferent to her message. After the celebration ends, Jiao takes Yan home. Yan's mother asks Jiao to stay the night with them. Although he initially refuses, he eventually agrees. Later that night, Seng steps out of her room and sees Jiao outside. She decides to approach him and notices the sadness on his face. She asks him what's wrong, and Jiao decides to confide in her. He reveals that he is burdened by a huge debt, not one he personally borrowed, but one he is obligated to repay. Seng reassures him, saying that once she becomes successful, she'll earn enough to help him repay the debt. However, Jiao knows there's only a small amount left to pay. He tells Seng to use her money for herself. The next morning, Seng sees Jiao leaving and bids him farewell from the window. He sends her a message saying his flight is scheduled for early in the day, and that he wants to return to his hometown to start a new life. Months later, during her final year of school, Seng decides to apply to a university in Jiao's city. However, the university only accepts top students, so she resolves to study hard. She dedicates all her time to her studies, and everything seems to be going well. One day, she overhears her brother mentioning that Jiao has a girlfriend. Seng is shocked. The next day, she goes to the airport and travels to Jiao's city. When her brother calls her, worried after searching for her all day, she tells him where she is. He asks if this sudden trip is related to the person she used to contact on the internet. Seng admits it is, and her brother tells her to stay where she is so he can call Jiao to meet her. Shortly after, Jiao arrives with his girlfriend. Seng is stunned when she sees them together. During their conversation, Seng is mentally absent. She excuses herself to go to the restroom, where she breaks down in tears, reflecting on how her dreams of love have come to an end. When she comes out, Jiao tells her, "I've bought you a ticket to go back home," and bids her farewell as she boards the plane and returns to her house. Upon her arrival, she finds her brother waiting for her. Though angry at what she did, he's relieved that she's safe. We all realize there was no internet friend. She only wanted to ask Jiao about his new girlfriend but lacked the courage to do so. When she gets home, her family treats her as if nothing happened. Once she's in her room, taking off her clothes, Yan talks to his parents, telling them not to say anything to her. From her behavior, they can tell she won't do something like that again. Her family assumes it was just youthful recklessness and that she won't repeat it. While in her room, Seng gathers all the gifts Jiao had ever given her and packs them into a box to throw away. 2 years later, Seng has matured and joined the university she always wanted, scoring top marks and making many new friends. She has completely moved on from Jiao, but one day, on her way to a friend's birthday party, she unexpectedly sees Jiao standing outside. Jiao is surprised, not to see her, but because she never answered his calls or replied to his messages. He starts talking to her, saying, "You've kept me waiting outside. Come on, let me take you back to your dorm." Seng tries to convince him that she's no longer the young girl he once knew and that she has grown into a confident woman. She tells him, "I do what I want now." Eventually, she listens to him and tells her friends she has to leave because it's getting late. Jiao gives her a ride in his car, and during the drive, they start talking. We find out Jiao has become a lead programmer at a gaming company. He tells her he's happy she's in the city because he often feels lonely. They agree to have lunch together sometime. When Seng returns to her room, she reflects on what he said. The next day, she is unsure what to do and shares her story with her friends. She begins narrating her past as though it's about another girl, a young girl who fell for an older guy. Her friends give her a variety of advice, encouraging her to go out with him and see where things lead. Later, we learn that Jiao's company is celebrating the first anniversary of a game he developed, which has gained a large user base. During the meeting, they discuss launching a new update. Jiao suggests using artificial intelligence to design characters for the game's sequel, but the project would require significant funding and time. The manager says they'll consider it. Meanwhile, Seng sends Jiao a message saying, "How about we have lunch together this weekend?" Jiao says, "All right," and informs her of the time and place for their meeting. The next day at university, Seng sees a male friend inviting their group, especially her, to a weekend movie night. Seng agrees to join, thinking it's fine since she'll also meet Jiao. Later, she goes to the movie night with her friends. That same evening, while Jiao is at home, he receives a message from Jian, who is still chasing after him. However, Jiao remains firm and refuses to start any relationship with her. The next day at work, he sends her a message informing her that he has finally paid off his last debt and asks her not to contact him again. Shocked, Jian tries to reach out, but Jiao stands his ground. Afterward, Jiao attends a meeting at work, but we see that he is unwell, clutching his stomach in pain. The manager approves his idea for the project, and the team begins working hard to implement it. Jiao assures them, "It's fine, don't worry." When the meeting ends, his condition worsens. Jiao calls Seng and tells her he can't make it because he's sick. Worried, Seng goes to his office and takes him to the hospital. After tests, the doctor informs them that Jiao's appendix is swollen and requires immediate surgery. Noting that it's a good thing she brought him in before it ruptured, Jiao is taken to the operating room, and Seng calls her mother to inform her of the situation. When her mother hears that Seng is still out so late, she scolds her, but Seng explains everything. Her mother feels bad for what happened to Jiao and tells Seng that Jiao had refused their help even when his mother was seriously ill. Sadly, Jiao's mother passed away not long after, and he returned the little money they had offered to help him. Her mother advises Seng to stay with Jiao until his condition improves. After the surgery, Seng visits Jiao to check on him. Jiao tells her to go home because it's late, but Seng decides to stay the night at the hospital. During this time, we see a small spark of emotion developing in Jiao. The next morning, Jiao asks Seng to bring him the laptop from his house after her classes. At university, Seng attends a lecture and apologizes to her friend for missing their meeting, explaining that a sick relative needed her care. She reassures her friend that they can meet again soon. After class, Seng goes to Jiao's house to pick up a bag of clothes and the laptop. As she leaves the apartment, she unknowingly crosses paths with Jian, but they don't see each other. Jian had come to check on Jiao, but finding the house empty, she leaves. Meanwhile, Seng returns to the hospital and gives Jiao the items she brought. Jiao starts working from his hospital bed, and we learn that an elderly man shares the room with him because he is also sick. When Jiao meets the old man assumed that Jiao is married to Seng, leading to a moment of confusion. They spend 30 minutes trying to convince the elderly man that they are not married. When they realize he is hard of hearing, Jiao finally says, "Fine, we are married." A few days later, Jiao is discharged from the hospital, and Seng takes him home. She starts leaving notes everywhere, reminding him about when to take his medicine, when to sleep early, what to eat, and what to avoid. She interferes with everything, and Jiao doesn't object, simply saying, "Whatever you say." At work, Jiao tells his manager and friend about what the old man in the hospital said. The manager remarks that Seng might be upset because that's not something to joke about. Feeling guilty, Jiao decides to apologize to Seng for everything. A few days later, everyone is celebrating New Year's Eve, and most of their friends plan to go out, except for Seng. She dislikes crowded places and decides to stay home. After everyone leaves, Jiao calls her to invite her to dinner. They go to a restaurant and enjoy their meal. Shortly after, Jian and her new boyfriend enter the restaurant. When Jian sees Jiao and Seng together, she approaches them and angrily asks Jiao why he hasn't been answering her calls. Jiao calmly responds, "I don't want any relationship between us." Furious, Jian splashes water on his face. Seng retaliates by throwing water on Jian's face, defending Jiao. The commotion escalates until Jian becomes enraged at Seng, and Jiao steps in, scolding Jian for her behavior. The restaurant manager intervenes and breaks up the situation, forcing them all to leave. Outside, they notice snow falling. Each of them quietly reflects on their feelings. We realize that Jiao has feelings for Seng, but doesn't know how to express them. At the same time, Seng's friend Min has a crush on her, but unfortunately, Seng is in love with someone else. Meanwhile, Yushi has feelings for Min, unaware that Min loves Seng. Later, when Jiao returns home, he finds Jian waiting for him. She apologizes for everything and says she will give him the space he needs, but asks him to at least answer her calls. Jiao replies, "I've paid off my debt, and I don't want to see you again." Once inside, we learn about the events of the past. Jiao's father had accidentally caused the death of Jian's father in a car accident. Jiao and his mother had tried to apologize and make amends, but Jian's family refused to forgive them. Jiao endured years of insults and judgment from others, including paying court-ordered compensation. As Jiao reflects on the past, he notices the toy figurine on his desk start moving again. Surprised, he steps outside to take a closer look. That night, one of his college friends calls and announces their upcoming wedding. The friend asks Jiao if he's interested in getting married himself. Jiao replies, "That's not in my plans." The next day, Seng sends Jiao a message saying, "Stop by the company, I have..." On the day after the exam, we see her and her friends hanging out at a bar, celebrating the end of the year. However, unfortunately, Seng gets slightly drunk, but luckily, Jiao calls him and finds out what happened. She comes to him to prevent any trouble, while Min tries to figure out my situation. When Min sees Jiao, he mistakenly assumes she is Seng's sister and leaves the scene. Jiao takes Seng home and asks him if the person she saw is someone he likes. Seng denies it, and Jiao describes the qualities of the person she loves. Later, as Seng drives her home, she falls asleep in the car. Jiao takes this opportunity to try to confess his feelings, but since she's asleep, it doesn't help him at all. The next morning, Seng wakes up with no memory of the previous night. She rushes to take Jiao to the airport. Before getting in the car, Jiao notices Min approaching to confess his feelings to her. Seng recalls Jiao's earlier comments about rejecting her ex-boyfriend, so she politely thanks Min for his feelings but tells him she loves someone else. Min responds with, "That's okay," and leaves. As Jiao gets into the car with Seng to go to the airport, he starts talking about Min, thinking she likes him. Jiao corrects him, saying she doesn't love Min. Seng jokingly tells her to find him someone, and Jiao teasingly replies, "You find me someone." Seng then realizes that Jiao might be describing someone older than her. When they arrive home, everyone celebrates her arrival with laughter and conversations that last the whole evening. Meanwhile, Jiao attends his friend's wedding and confides in him about the girl he loves, explaining the qualities she described about the person she likes. His friend is shocked because the description perfectly matches him. However, Jiao dismisses it, saying he's not the person she's describing. His friend, however, encourages him to believe otherwise and to confirm his suspicions. Finally, the wedding day arrives. Jiao and Seng sit together, and Jiao starts asking her questions. He asks, "How long have you known the person you love?" Seng replies, "Since university," which surprises Jiao because she had previously told him she met this person at a restaurant. This makes Jiao realize she had been lying, and the person she was describing was him all along. After the wedding ends, Jiao offers to take Seng home. On the way, he asks her when she's returning to university. Seng replies, "The day after tomorrow." Fortunately, her flight is the same as Jiao's. He tells her, "I'll take you there." When she gets home and tells her family that Jiao will take her to the airport, Jiao is at his hotel canceling his flight reservation and rescheduling it to match Seng's. The next day at the airport, they chat about her past solo travels. Seng mentions that she thought the girl who was with him last time was his girlfriend, but Jiao clarifies it wasn't true. As they talk, it's time to board the flight. When they return to university, Seng's friends see Jiao and realize he is the guy she has feelings for. After she explains what happened in the past few days, they also figure out that Jiao likes Seng too. Although they both now know about each other's feelings, they avoid talking about it and instead play a game of cat and mouse. Meanwhile, Jiao thanks his friend for the good advice that helped him realize Seng has feelings for him. One day, while Seng is with her friends at a cafe, Jiao calls and invites her to lunch. When she meets him, she notices the girl who had been with him at the airport. It turns out she's his manager. Later, Jiao excuses himself to use the restroom, and his manager explains to Seng what happened that day, that Jiao was feeling unwell and couldn't drive, so she accompanied him only to assist. Just then, Jiao's co-workers arrive, wanting to meet the lucky girl Jiao has fallen for. After the introductions, Seng and Jiao leave for another restaurant due to the traffic at the cafe. Later, they go to the cinema. Before the movie, Seng orders a drink but realizes it contains milk, to which she is allergic. Jiao wants to take her to the hospital, but Seng insists she'll be fine after taking medicine from the pharmacy. During this time, Jiao learns that her birthday is approaching and suggests they celebrate together. Seng agrees. When she gets home, she tells her friends everything that happened. On her birthday, as she steps out of her room, she finds Jiao waiting outside. He takes her to the cinema, and the two grow closer. After the movie, Jiao offers to walk her home. Seng reminds him of his earlier statement that he wouldn't visit her home or workplace, prompting Jiao to explain, "I said that because Jian was chasing after me. I didn't want her to meet you because I was afraid she'd harm you." When they arrive at her home, Jiao surprises her with a cake and a beautifully arranged birthday celebration. The two sit down to share the cake, and after some small talk, Jiao finally decides to confess his feelings. However, he doesn't directly say, "I love you," leaving Seng unsure of how to respond. They play the cat and mouse game again, with Seng teasing him saying, "Chase me first, then we'll see." Jiao replies, "I'm ready to chase you for the next 10 years if that's what it takes." Later, Seng returns home to find her friends waiting to hear everything that happened. They decide to help her strengthen her connection with Jiao and ensure their relationship blossoms. Later that night, Seng opens the gift Jiao brought her and finds a camera. She's overjoyed. At the same time, her brother calls to wish her a happy birthday, but he jokingly asks if she's been focusing on her studies or if boys are following her around. Seng laughs and says she's been studying, though she's currently spending time with an older guy. Right after, her brother calls back, scolding her and urging her to concentrate on her education. The next morning, while having breakfast with her friends, Seng receives a message from Jiao asking if she's free the following day. Her friends decide to meddle and test Jiao, saying, "Let's make him break a rule tomorrow." Jiao responds, "No way," and they agree on plans for the next day. Unfortunately, when the day comes, Jiao cancels, saying he can't make it due to urgent issues at work and promises to reschedule. However, he cancels again the second time, leaving Seng standing alone, unsure of what to do. Eventually, after a long while, the work problems are resolved. Jiao suggests they meet, surprising Seng. Meanwhile, we see Jiao heading to the hospital to visit his father, who has been in a coma for 9 years. A flashback shows the events leading up to his father's condition. His father had come home one day, visibly distressed, and confessed to his wife that he accidentally hit someone with his car and fled the scene. He was unsure if the person was alive or dead, but was certain no one had seen him. Jiao and his mother were appalled and refused to keep it a secret, immediately calling the police and an ambulance. Amid the chaos, Jiao's father missed taking his medication and collapsed, falling into a coma. Since then, Jiao has been burdened with guilt and responsibility. He wanted to drop out of university to pay for the house expenses and court fines, but his mother forbade him, saying, "If you do that, from this day on, I'm no longer your mother." Unfortunately, after Jiao started university, his mother's health deteriorated. She tried to leave the hospital to reduce costs, but stayed until her death. After leaving the hospital, Jiao calls Seng and says, "I'm coming to see you." Though it's late, Seng steps outside to meet him and notices the sadness in his eyes, though Jiao denies it, saying he's fine. Seng then tells him, "If you want to win my heart, you'll need to put in a lot more effort." Jiao replies, "I'm ready." The next day at university, Seng sees Jiao, who tells her he wants to attend a lecture with her. She asks, "What about your work?" Jiao responds, "I took the day off. I'll spend it all with you." Seng feels shy but happy. Later, when Zhao returns to his apartment, he finds a message from Yan saying, "I think my sister is spending time with someone. Since she's alone, I want you to find out who this guy is." Zhao laughs and replies, "Got it." The following day, Seng informs her brother that she can't return home during her break because she needs to attend a training program at the company. Her brother doesn't believe her and assumes she just wants to spend time with her mysterious love interest whose identity he doesn't know. One evening, Zhao asks Seng if she has time to meet up. Seng replies that she's busy, but to his surprise, she has prepared a small birthday party for him along with a gift. She tells him to make a wish before blowing out the candle. Zhao says, "You already know what I wish for." Seng responds, "Is it really that easy for you?" and then says, "I'm okay with us having a relationship." Zhao is overjoyed and kisses her, making Seng feel shy. Zhao then tells her there's something important she needs to know. His mother passed away, his father has been in a coma, and the coma was caused by a car accident his father had while drunk, which led to someone's death. He also explains that he had to pay the court fines, which left him in financial difficulty. Seng reassures him that none of that matters, and that it won't change how she feels about their relationship. The next day, a power outage affects the entire building Seng is in, so she's forced to go to the library to study. When Zhao finds out, he warns her that the cafe near the library is too crowded and offers her to study at his house, assuring her that she won't face any disturbances. Seng agrees and goes to his house, where she finds a quiet study area he prepared for her. While she studies, Zhao brings her food and tries to flirt, but Seng tells him, "I came here only to study." Later, Zhao takes her back to her dormitory and apologizes, saying, "I'm sorry if my closeness makes you uncomfortable." Seng replies, "No, it's just that I feel shy," and confesses that she likes him too. That night, Zhao talks to his married friend and tells him about his relationship with the girl he loves. His friend praises the advice he gave him and jokes that he must now tell Yan about his relationship. Zhao hesitates and says, "Stop, the girl I'm talking about is Yan's sister and I haven't told him yet that I love his sister." His friend laughs and says, "If that's the case, I don't know you and I never helped you." At that moment, Yan sees the messages and calls Zhao, demanding to know why he didn't tell him about dating his sister. Zhao responds, "We need to meet up so I can explain everything to you, but it'll have to wait until the holiday." Meanwhile, Seng confides in her friend, admitting that every time Zhao gets closer to her, she feels anxious and is afraid he'll get upset if he notices her pulling away. Her friend advises her not to worry and reminds her that they're in a relationship. She also suggests spending more time with him to ease her anxiety. Later, Seng spends time with Zhao, and when he kisses her again, she no longer feels nervous. The next day, Seng receives a call informing her that she has been accepted as an intern at the company. Excited, she calls her brother to let him know she won't be coming home during the break because of the internship. Her brother, however, becomes angry and blocks her. On her first day at work, Seng's supervisor turns out to be none other than Jian's friend. Recognizing her, Jian immediately assigns her difficult tasks. Then she starts to punish her the smallest mistakes. One day, while Jia was on a call, her manager saw her and yelled, "Don't take personal calls during work hours." When Jiao realized she was late for work, he came to pick her up and offered her support, telling her, "You're a capable person." The next day, before heading to his own job, he dropped her off at work. Her manager saw them in the car together and later spoke to Jian. At that moment, Jian became angry but tried to act calm. Later, the manager scolded Seng harshly, to the point where a co-worker intervened, saying, "She has no right to yell at you since you're still in training." The manager retorted, "I hate her," and Seng overheard this, which upset her deeply. Afterward, Jian contacted my friend to arrange a meeting, but she discovered that everyone, including the staff, was planning to meet at a specific location. When Jian arrived at the venue and saw Seng, she said, "Stay away from Zhao. His mother passed away, his father is in a coma, and he's struggling with overwhelming hospital expenses. He has no bright future and is only after someone who can give him all their money and time." Seng replied, "I'm willing to give him both my money and my time. I'd appreciate it if you didn't interfere in matters that don't concern you." Jian then said, "Do you know that his father killed mine in an accident and fled the scene? His father is a murderer." Seng calmly replied, "I'm aware of everything and know that he paid the court-ordered compensation, so relax." Seng, frustrated, handed her a card and said, "You can take all the money on this card. I'll always support you." However, Zhao didn't understand the real meaning behind her words, but was very happy. The next day, after work, Jiao dropped Seng home. Seng's brother later called her and said, "I just saw you holding that guy's hand." At that moment, they noticed he was standing right there. Her brother said, "I hope what I just saw isn't true." Seng tried to explain, but he refused to listen and brought her home. Later, he confronted Jiao and punched him, but Jiao didn't fight back. Once he calmed down, Yan scolded his friend. Jiao said, "This is the last time I'll talk to you about this. I don't see you as a friend, I see you as a brother." Yan left and followed him home, watching from a distance. The next day, Jiao worried that Seng might see the bruises from the fight, but she noticed them anyway. She realized her brother was the one who had attacked him, so she confronted her brother in anger and said, "We're not siblings anymore," before bursting into tears. Her brother, looking at her, said, "Don't you see the injuries I have too?" Seng replied, "I know you started the fight." Her brother said, "We should maintain our sibling relationship, but I see no benefit in it." Things eventually returned to normal, with Jiao and Seng developing feelings for each other in front of her brother, who said nothing about it. The next day, Jiao's friend told him he had seen Jian talking to someone she was romantically involved with a few days ago. Jiao went to Jian and said, "I've endured your trouble for so many years, but if you try to harm Seng again, I'll call the police." He then demanded that she stay away from Seng. At the same time, Seng's manager was frustrated because they couldn't come up with new advertising ideas. Seng suggested, "What about creating a cartoon?" The manager liked her idea and decided to proceed with it, but after the meeting, her immediate supervisor got angry. She told Seng, "You're just a trainee. You shouldn't share ideas without telling me first since I'm your supervisor." She treated Seng poorly, saying, "Next time, you should have told me first because that's how things should work." Seng apologized, saying, "I'm sorry." Her supervisor replied, "I expect this kind of behavior from someone who once stole the man I loved." After work, Seng saw her brother waiting outside. He told her he would be leaving the next day. Seng said, "You should have told me earlier so I could take time off and spend some quality time with you." She began crying, and her brother said, "You clearly don't love me as much as I thought." He soon realized her stress was work-related. Later, Jiao arrived and Seng's brother told him, "Make sure you know what's going on with her." Jiao tried to find out what was troubling her, but she didn't want to talk. Jiao assured her, "I'll always be by your side, and I'll be someone you can rely on." He hugged her and mentioned that he knew about her meeting with Jian. "Don't worry," he said, "she won't bother you anymore because I've talked to her." He added, "You shouldn't hide anything from me, just tell me everything." The next day at work, a client appreciated Seng's idea, and the manager began praising her. After work, she met Jiao, who rented her an apartment near the university. That night, her room's air conditioner broke, and she discovered that the repair staff were on mid-year leave. She would have to wait until the semester began. When Jiao found out, he brought her to his home to stay until the repair staff returned. They seemed very happy living together, and each was focused on their respective tasks. As Seng's internship ended, she gave small gifts to everyone who had supported her as a token of appreciation. She didn't forget her supervisor and handed her a gift, saying, "I didn't steal anyone's lover, truly." Her supervisor seemed to believe her this time. Meanwhile, Jiao successfully completed his project and was promoted to a higher position because he deserved it. He then decided to spend more time with Seng and showed her various places they could visit. However, Seng suggested they set up a tent instead to save money. On the day they planned to build the tent, heavy rain came, but Jiao set it up in his backyard instead. That evening, Seng received a video call from her mother. Seng felt uneasy and told her mother, "I'm just building a tent with my friends." However, her brother, knowing everything, started causing trouble again. The next day, when Seng returned to university, she convinced her friends to join a design competition. She seemed very happy and excited about it. After some time, Seng returned to her family home. While she was talking to Jiao, her mother overheard her and told Seng's father that she believed Seng was in a relationship. They both hesitated about asking her directly, but eventually, they did. Seng replied, "I was actually planning to tell you myself." However, when they asked who it was, she avoided answering and dodged their questions. Later, Seng went to her brother and began acting kindly toward him, even feeding him by hand. Her brother, suspicious, said, "Stay away from me. What do you want? Just tell me." Seng confessed, "I found out you and Jiao and your friends are meeting up. Let me come along." At first he refused, but eventually he gave in. During the entire trip, they teased each other constantly. Zhao introduced Seng to his friends, and they all had a great time together. Afterward, Zhao walked her home. Seng's mother approached her and said, "I saw how close you and Zhao are." She admitted to suspecting they were in a relationship and said, "Zhao is a good person, but your family situation isn't great and you're still too young. It's better to think about this again." She advised Seng to distance herself from Zhao, but Seng ignored her advice and didn't tell Zhao about it. Later, Seng's father met with Zhao and said, "I know you well, but I'm concerned about your family's circumstances. I don't want my daughter living in a difficult situation. You know she's still young and doesn't understand what's best for her. I also don't want her to marry someone far away from us. When she finishes university, I expect her to return to this town." Zhao promised her father that he would provide Seng with a good life in the future. "I love her deeply," Zhao said. "This relationship is serious to me." Seng's father wavered, but didn't fully agree. When Seng returned home, her father told her he had met with Zhao and shared everything they had discussed. Seng became worried that her father's words might have hurt Zhao. She rushed out to talk to him, but Zhao reassured her, saying, "I'm not upset. Your family is only telling the truth." When Seng learned Zhao was returning to work the next day, she panicked, fearing he would leave her. She packed all her belongings and said, "I'm going back to the university dorms. Don't worry about me." When Zhao found out, he rushed after her to the train station. Seng said, "Do you remember when I used to come to the station to meet a boy I met online? It was all a lie. I only came to see you because I realized I loved you." She continued, "I've loved you secretly since I was young. I even wrote this letter when I was in middle school. I wanted to grow up, earn money, and pay off your debts so we could have a life together." Zhao broke down in tears, hugged her tightly, and apologized for all the times he hadn't been there for her. He promised, "Don't worry, I won't leave you, even if your family opposes our relationship. We'll find another way." Later, Seng came up with an idea for the design competition and began working on it. Meanwhile, Zhao informed his colleagues at work about his decision to decline a higher position. He told them he planned to move back to the town where Seng lived. His colleagues tried to convince him otherwise, but Zhao firmly said, "I've already made my decision." Later, a doctor contacts Zhao and informs him that his father is in critical condition. Zhao rushes to the hospital to say goodbye. He tells his father, "I've paid off all our debts and I love you, Dad." Shortly after, his father passes away. When Zhao leaves the hospital, he sees Seng waiting for him. He tries to stay composed, but as soon as she hugs him, he breaks down in tears. Later, he visits his mother's grave, accompanied by Seng. He begins talking to his mother, and Seng promises her, "I will take care of your son." With time, Zhao starts to recover, thanks to Seng's support. He tells her that he has resigned from his job to move to her town and start a new job there. He says, "While you finish university, I'll deal with any challenges that come my way in your town." After some time apart, they reunite, and Zhao begins preparing to establish his new company in another city, while Seng focuses on her design competition. Later, Zhao visits Seng's family and explains everything he's doing to build trust with them. Seng's father eventually says, "I accept your relationship." Zhao shares this news with Seng, and she is overjoyed. She then tells him that she has won the design competition and that the award ceremony will take place at the end of the month. On the day of the competition's award ceremony, Seng sees Zhao standing in front of her. He announces, "I'm the one presenting the awards today, representing my company." He adds, "You are someone I am incredibly proud of." They take a picture together after the awards are handed out. Later, on Seng's graduation day, she celebrates with her friends. Zhao is by her side, and they share a wonderful time together. At one point, Seng's friend points out that her makeup is smudged, so she goes to the restroom to fix it. During this time, Zhao and others prepare a romantic setting for the evening. At the end of the day, Zhao proposes to Seng. He had already spoken with her family and secured their approval. When she says yes, Zhao says, "From the moment I met you, I admired you, and soon after I loved you. For a long time I've loved you in secret, even without you knowing." Subscribe for more videos like this one. Tap the bell icon to get the update, and don't forget to like the video to reach out many people. Thanks for watching.